Artificial intelligence continues to dominate headlines and in many ways our lives. And I'm very excited to be joined by Nick Skytland today from Gloo. A lot to talk about here. You have this Flourishing AI Christian benchmark, and you've released this today. Can you talk about what exactly this is and why your organization embarked on it?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Really excited to talk about just the benchmark and the latest research that we've been doing. So, Gloo is a technology company that serves the faith ecosystem. And back in July, we had released some research that we call Flourishing AI. And it's just a benchmark that's really grounded in 7 dimensions of human flourishing based on a lot of research that's out there. At the time, we were looking at human flourishing just in general. And this new benchmark that we're releasing today is really with a Christian worldview focus. And the reason this is important is there's a lot of benchmarks out there, right? There's a lot of AI research done. There's a lot of work done around harm prevention and safety and human welfare. But we really think that this might be the first comprehensive framework of its kind, measuring AI alignment for human flourishing from an authentic biblical worldview.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Let's just sort of talk about worldview, because right now, one of the things that troubles me about AI, I think AI is great. I think there's good, there's bad. It's like anything else, right? A lot of people are afraid of it. They don't want to use it. I know people who are saying, I'm not going to do that. They're afraid it's going to wipe jobs out. It probably already is wiping some jobs out. There's a lot of concern around it. But the big thing for me is the hidden worldview, right? Who owns the AI? Who's programming the AI? These are questions that people have, because the assumption is that when you go to one of these AI models, that it's giving you completely fair and completely fair and balanced rather information. What have you found? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so first of all, I share your concern. I'll start by saying I'm a very glass full optimist when it comes to technology. I'll just state that right up front. I've spent my entire career working in technology, and overall, AI is incredible. There's a lot of promise in it. However, like you said, I think there's something that we really do need to understand here, that AI does have a built in bias. It does have a built in, essentially hidden worldview, especially to the average user. I mean, the average user that is just using AI, not really being aware of how AI was built or how it was trained or what the data was that it was trained on. And ultimately, all of that introduces bias. And I think this is something we're really trying to understand with the Flourishing AI benchmark, to expose the structural bias and then think about, what does that mean from a Christian worldview? So, for example, the bias in a lot of the frontier models that you see is really based on the data that's trained on, right? And that comes from a secular worldview. We shouldn't be surprised that the worldview of the models isn't a Christian one, right? So you can't expect the models to do an amazing job in drawing out implications of the biblical passages or thinking about Christian virtues and how that shows up well in our relationship. Some of these models are just not designed to do that. It's not designed to ask, what is my purpose from a Christian worldview? Why does God allow suffering from a Christian worldview, etc.? So I think it's not that they're bad. It's very, very interesting, very great technology. But as a Christian, we should ask the question, does it represent my values? And if not, how do I approach that? What do I think about that?
So, when Christians ask AI spiritual or moral questions, how are the models responding, right? Obviously, this is a loaded question because every model is different, but what are we seeing? Is it consistent with scripture? Is it not mostly? What are we seeing in that regard?
Wait, so Christians are asking AI questions about theology and about relationships that maybe were once reserved for the local pastor or their partner or a counselor. And I think that's an important point, right? I mean, you stated it almost as an assumption that we know of, but in a lot of the conversations that I'm having, maybe there's not an understanding that not only Christians, all humans are using technology and maybe more than we even recognize. And so it's such an important question, and I think we're learning a lot. We're learning a lot about this, and so a few things that we've seen. You can read all the research that we put online today. You can see the scores. You can look at it from both the new baseline we have for just general human flourishing, from a general secular worldview of that, and then from a Christian perspective, and then you can compare those. And you can do that across the 7 dimensions. And that teases out some of the things that we're learning. So, not surprisingly, faith and spirituality remain the most difficult dimension across all the frontier models that we're seeing, right? This is a really important point, but we don't just measure it in the dimension. We think about, how does our faith affect, for example, how we approach our finances? From a general safe answer for a frontier model around how should I budget my money might simply be, track your expenses, understand where that's going, build a plan, go from there. And that's great advice. But from a Christian worldview, we might look at money from a very different perspective, and that context isn't built in, right? There's no understanding and sensitivity to that value system. So we might say, hey, actually, it's not even our money. We have a role and a responsibility, a stewardship opportunity here to use money well. And it's not about guilt or shame, but it's rather about the gospel and us being generous and having an impact. And therefore, we want to manage our money well. So you see, it's just a fundamentally different worldview. And it starts with faith, but it spills over into the other dimensions. And we saw a lot of that in our research, of just that spillover and that interdependence across the dimensions.
When you were scoring the leading AI models, going through all this, what surprised you by these findings? What stood out as maybe the most concerning or the most even hopeful? We can look at both sides, the most concerning and then maybe the most hopeful.
Well, I'll say the most hopeful. So we measure, our process, our methodology is pretty mature in that we look at objective answers. So when you prompt a model, how does it respond to, say, such as a multiple choice question that has a factual answer and the other ones are wrong? So we look at it from that perspective. We look at it from a subjective standpoint, so open-ended questions, and then we look at it tangentially. How does that interdependence between the dimensions work? And so I'll say optimistically, what's hopeful here is the models are getting better. And you'll see this on our general scores, that over the last time we did this in July, we rated 28 models. Only 3 of them are still relevant today. That's how fast the industry is moving, right? Only 3 of them have not been surpassed by yet a better model by the same company. And so as those models come out at a very, very rapid pace, I think we've had 3 in the past 2 weeks, you see improvements overall, and they're doing a better job generally on all the dimensions. Now, on the other side of the coin, what we continue to see, what we discovered in July, and what we continue to see today, is that it doesn't do so well on the dimensions that have to do with faith, relationships, character. Some of those things that are not so much about taking a math test, but about asking questions about purpose and faith and meaning, and asking the hard questions that we're inevitably going to ask AI. And so I think it's really, really interesting. We're seeing some saturation in the objective scores. So, our challenge in doing these benchmarks is ask hard enough questions to really tease these things out. But from the subjective perspective, that's where we can really tease out the values alignment and look at those changes, and then that of course improves what we can do to serve the faith ecosystem and provide AI in a way that's helpful and meaningful and aligned with the Christian worldview.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Because we can be fearful and we can come out with all these things against AI, but the reality is AI is here to stay, and there are a lot of great things that it's already doing and can do. How should churches, Christian educators, and parents be thinking about these AI tools right now, especially as they become more embedded in our everyday life? Again, you can say you're not going to use AI, but it's part of everything we're doing already, right? You go to Google, you go to the bank, anything you're doing, AI is running something, some part of your life every day, whether you like it or not, unless you are completely off the grid, living somewhere in the middle of nowhere. But for most people, AI is here and it's part of our lives. So what should churches and Christian educators and parents be thinking about these tools right now?
Yeah, and I appreciate where you said, hey, we shouldn't fear it. I think that's so true. Like sometimes the conversation can quickly go to, hey, this technology is even evil, right? It's not evil. It's not good or bad. It's like a hammer. You can use it to break a window or build a house. And AI is the framework and the technology and the scaffolding of our time. My children are growing up on it. I am using it. I think we don't want to be ignorant about that. In fact, I think that this is a huge opportunity for Christians, right? We have a responsibility, a purpose, a mission for why we are here. And in many ways, this is the Gutenberg press moment of our lifetime. And so, if that was true, and we believed we were here for a reason, a purpose, and a mission, what could we do with AI? And I think then that leads to awareness. We should be aware about our choices. It is so easy to be not even choosing things, just kind of using things as they show up in our digital lives. And we don't even question it. I think about how I use Google right now. Do you remember back in the day, like way back in the day, my kids, talk about decades ago, like back in the 1900s when we used to like do a Google search and we'd have to click on the links to really try to discern the best answer. You don't have to do that anymore. Google just gives you the answer. How convenient is that? But I think we as Christians should be aware, hey, there's a worldview here that shows up. And maybe that's okay for a certain application. But when there's other applications that have to do more with my heart and my posture as a Christian, I really want to consider those values in the AI that I'm using and maybe and choose accordingly.
Yeah.
One more thing about AI that's really incredible is there's so many models. It's hard to keep up. There's so many models with hyper specific focuses at this point, and just knowing that there's not just one model that you can use is I think a really helpful just understanding we can have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And final question for you, just looking ahead, what is Gloo going to be doing in this area? How will Gloo be helping people and helping these AI models to better perhaps reflect Christian wisdom, purpose, and truth? What steps will you take? Obviously, this is a big step, monitoring and providing information so people understand what they're dealing with and what they're looking at. But what does the future look like for your organization in this regard?
Yeah, so we are in the business of building AI that you can trust. And I will just be the first to admit, as a parent, as a dad, as a guy with a job, that tries to be present in all of those things, it can be really overwhelming to keep up with the pace of change here, right? The industry is doing an amazing job of innovating. Our job as the church is to really kind of discern how we can use that technology to live on mission, to live with purpose. And so we're in the business of helping the faith ecosystem through that to use technology that they can trust. Now, we do the heavy lifting, right? We are in the business of building hybrid models, fine tuning models, ingesting data in a way that improves all of it. And then we have these benchmarks as well that we are just constantly evaluating. What's the best practice? What's the best thing that's out there? And how can we then quickly make that available to the faith ecosystem? So that's a big part of what we do. It's a huge privilege that we have, and we take it super seriously. And honestly, we're really, really excited about it because we're so close. We have a front row seat. We get to see the possibility here, and it's pretty incredible.
It's pretty amazing. Well, where can people go if they want to actually look at this and read it and check out everything that you guys have researched here?
Yeah, you can go to gloo.com/FAI. That's just a simple URL. And what you'll see there is a brand new page, updated insights. Like there's a deep insights research report that we've linked there. There's an interactive dashboard where you can play with the data. You can see charts, bar graphs, spider graphs. If you want to geek out like I do about the data, you can dig into it there. And we will continue to update that website with the latest research that we are publishing when it has to do with all this.
I love that. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time and joining me today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.